Hey guys, it's Shama here for another episode of Retailing Weekly. I'm super excited to be here. We got lots of cool stuff happening. I'm personally heading to Paris today to head over for Paris Fashion Week and Market. Really excited about that. There should be a lot of really fun things happening in Paris. So I'm really looking forward to going to market. We're actually going to be doing, hey Logan, we're going to be doing a buy out there for a store that we're helping to open in Bahrain in the Middle East. So very, very excited about that. But of course, for another episode this week, we're going to be talking about some really interesting things and some things that I think have a personal kind of note to them. So I was recently reading on, I believe it was Wall Street Journal the other day, and they were talking about Gucci and the rise of Gucci right now. And those of you guys realize, Alessandro Michele has been doing an amazing job of really putting together these like super kick-ass collections. And to be honest, guys, Gucci never saw ready-to-wear sales this high in the last 10 years. And when I was at Gucci back in 2010, that was right after the crash. That was right after we had kind of the big, the stock market crash. Retail plummeted back in 2008. It was like, oh my God, the housing market. And what was so fascinating is back in 2008, that's when we really started to see a lot of outlet stores pop up, right? You saw all of a sudden Woodbury Commons, Cabazon, you saw these high-end retail outlets pop up. And what did they do? Well, they were there to take all of this overstock ready-to-wear. And it was like you just could not get rid of the ready-to-wear fast enough. And so the outlets became this like sinking ship of all this ready-to-wear stuff. And you had stuff from 10 years ago. It was insane. And so what's amazing right now is with Alessandro Michele, what you're seeing now is really ready-to-wear take on a much huger proportion of the business at Gucci. And what's even more fascinating, guys, is that Gucci is now strategically stepping away from doing markdowns in stores. They are ending their deeper discounts in stores, and they're going to be driving all of their traffic to their outlet stores. So the outlet business is going to become even more important. Now, the Wall Street Journal article was really talking about how, there's possibly this bust right after we see this boom. And it's typical that we see that in some fashion houses, right? Business going really well, the market's really hot on it, and then all of a sudden it's oversaturated and it's everywhere. And what do you do about that? Well, Gucci is not the first time that it's ever seen it, right? Remember back in the Tom Ford days, it was huge, right? Gucci was like the thing. Everyone was so obsessed. It was sexy, it was new, it was fresh. It was almost like how it is now, right? In a totally different aesthetic, but the same kind of market response. And so what I think is super fascinating is that when we think about what is, when we think about kind of what is the goal or how does a brand grow and how does a brand get that kind of exposure and get that notice, but then also be able to maintain that over time, a lot of that has to come in the distribution, right? So cutting down sales, moving all the markdowns to the outlets, making sure that you own your distribution channels. I know for a fact, I still have friends like Gucci, that people are lining up around the door, like around the block, in order to be able to come in to be able to purchase. So it's being able to have limited run productions. Now, just a few weeks ago, it was fascinating. I was talking about an article in Jing Daily that had to do with these fake collaborations that were coming up, and these fake collaborations around Balenciaga and Nike, for example. And so you're actually able to find, and it was just like the most exclusive thing, right? Imagine buying something that the brand hasn't even made. It's like it's so fake and so exclusive that it takes on this whole other meaning, right? Is it ethical? No, but is it super interesting that you could be walking around in this age with so many collaborations? You could actually be walking around in a collaboration that someone might think is now more authentic than ever, simply because of the way in which we've been able to kind of hyper normalize brand collaborations. Supreme and Louis Vuitton, for example, right? Not many people had a chance to get their hands on those pieces. We know that there are certain collections that were made, but what about these other options? And so I think it's fascinating to think about the world of the hyper normalization of collaborations, as well as now kind of honing in on distribution channels and making sure that distribution channels are really solidified, right? That you're not overexposed, that you're reining in where your products are being sold. And for the longest time, again, guys, Gucci ready to wear, down, right? Not selling, not going anywhere. Now with Alessandro Michele, the company is super duper profitable. And I think the biggest question now is how long will his reign as, Gucci's king and the turnaround king lie? How long will that be? Okay, other super dope things happening in the world of retail. I don't know if you guys heard about this, but Chanel is launching a new Instagram channel specifically for their fans, and it's called We Love Coco. And what they're doing, and this is super smart, and a lot of bigger brands, I imagine, will kind of follow suit in this way. So We Love Coco is basically an Instagram handle that allows, that basically is reposting from other brands, from other people rather, their own pictures of them in Coco Chanel products and in Chanel products. And what's amazing here is Chanel has realized that there's a huge power to the people out there in the market who are obsessed with the branding, obsessed with the new products they put out, and are really kind of the best brand ambassadors for the company without necessarily being celebrity, right? So we're talking about high profile Instagrammers, we're talking about high profile, pseudo celebrities, B-listers, even, the kinds of like micro influencers that are not necessarily the micro influencers are not necessarily kind of the big guys, right? But what you can do now is you can post a picture of the product, of your shot, with the hashtag We Love Coco, and that hashtag is now being screened, and it's being screened to see the viability of reposting it on the We Love Coco Instagram channel. Now, what's amazing is this is basically a digital magazine that is created by the consumers of the product. It's fucking insane. Oh, sorry. It is like so brilliant. So when you think about as a brand, right, when you start to get big enough or you start to build kind of a cult following, we oftentimes used to think about, okay, we have to repost, right? We have to see who's writing about what, see who's posting about our stuff, and then repost it because we want to include our customer profiles in our messaging. We want to make sure that our customers feel like they can connect with our Instagram channels. But what about if we just had entire Instagram channels that were dedicated to those very customers and to those influencers that were already posting about the product, right? Can we actually leverage that? And so I think We Love Coco is an amazing initiative to be able to really see whether or not there can be enough content and how can that be curated. I'm interested to see whether or not the images are going to be how diverse they are, whether it's going to be more campaign style, meaning more thematic, or it's going to be a little bit more all over the place. They're going to have so much content to choose from that I'm really wondering how they choose to curate that, right? Because then that becomes kind of the second level, because now basically kind of like that online publication Obsessi, right? Where it's just like only magazine on Instagram, right? You can only find it on Instagram. I wonder if We Love Coco is going to be similar in that sense, right? Where you can only find it there and it's just curated images and it takes on kind of a digital magazine kind of layout. So that is super cool. The other thing that is totally worth mentioning, and this is something that we've been keeping our eye on, and it's fascinating to see how now it's actually being executed. So last year at the end of 2017, Ariel Charnas, she came out with her first collaboration with Nordstrom's. Now, for those of you guys who don't know her, I personally didn't really know about her. She's a super influencer, meaning she's got over 1 million followers, super engaged. And the last few weeks, we've been really keeping our eye on and talking about working more collaboratively with influencers. When our clients are asking us, what do we do from an Instagram marketing standpoint or from an influencer marketing standpoint, I always tell them, you've got to be thinking about this from a much bigger perspective. You got to be thinking about how you can incorporate them into your photography, how you can incorporate them into longer term campaigns. Maybe you do a collaboration on a product, right? You've got to be thinking about influencers not just as far as I give you money or I give you a piece of product and now you wear it, right? It's too transactional. Influencers are now taking on a much more hybrid and important role in the consumer marketplace. And so case in point, Nordstrom's launched last September a collaboration between Ariel and their private label brand Treasure and Bond. And so the collaboration was called Something Navy and Treasure and Bond, right, with an X. And it's interesting here because Something Navy is really her brand that she's launched, right? And so she's basically coming out with these elevated basic collections. So what's amazing is that everyone went bananas over it. They were able to sell, I want to say it was something like $1 million on Nordstroms.com in 24 hours. They were really able to start to open up the gap here as far as bridging together influencer marketing, product development and creation, as well as the channel of selling product. Because as we all know, guys, selling product is really such a high margin activity. And for a lot of these influencers, they actually don't want to launch a brand because they have no idea how to launch a brand. They only know how to launch their own personalities. But as you guys all know, who are brand owners, who own retail stores, launching a collection or launching product is so much more difficult, right? It's so much more difficult. You have all of your, all of the price points, all of the margins, everything you've got to be considering, the marketing vehicles, all of that. So if you do launch and you do go into a collaboration with an influencer, really see that influencer as a marketing vehicle, right? It's your collection, your brand, maybe it's a collaboration, but the influencer is a marketing vehicle. And the more you align yourself with this marketing vehicle, the better you're gonna be able to tap into it. It's not gonna be as if you are, giving them a picture or they're posting a picture and then after 24 hours or a week, it's gone, right? They are more embedded in it because they have a bigger stake. So start to think about these kinds of business collaborations, right? Start to think about, looking at different Instagram influencer agencies, if you're interested in doing some bigger collaborations, even start to think about some of these micro influencers where you guys are growing your brands together, right? It's not necessarily about tapping into big influencers if you're a small fish. You've got to be thinking about holistically how we can grow the business together. So anyway, it was a 30 style capsule collection, super duper small. The prices were between $49 and $199, so we're not even talking about high price point goods here. But genius activation, and once again, Nordstrom's continues to blow us away. I wish I could say there was another retailer out there that was just killing it from an in-store standpoint. I think Matches, Net-a-Porter have all really taken the place of Barney's as far as a .com destination for cool and new emerging designers. But unfortunately, fortunately, I think Nordstrom's is really still the place when it comes to how we look at in-store, right? And collaborations, right? So Olivia Kim is still bringing on new brands. They're still sourcing emerging market talent, and they're really killing it from an in-store perspective. So kudos to this new collaboration, and hopefully it piques your guys' interest on how to start to incorporate better influencer collaborations more at the core of your brand identity. All right, just a couple interesting, cool things before I have to get ready to head to the airport. Paris awaits in its cold and chilly splendor. Okay, so this was a really fascinating article, and this one was also came out on WWD, and this really had to do about returns and waste, and this is a really important issue for a lot of you brands out there and retailers who have to suffer and deal with a lot of product returns. And so 3.5 billion products are returned by customers every year. That's a lot of product. So much of that product ends up in waste, it ends up in landfills. And it's very important that we start to think about what our distribution looks like from a, reselling or donation standpoint of all of these returned goods. So obviously, guys, as we know, mobile commerce, which means e-commerce, mobile commerce, tipped at $2 trillion last year. With the rise of these growing sales, we obviously are expecting a lot more returns. And a lot of small brands, I think, do a great job of being able to mitigate returns, right? You have to be able to have an XYZ condition, it has to be sent back in a certain number of days. But as your business grows, you have to be able to accept more returns, right? It's just simply the way things go. They're not always going to be sent back in the right fashion. that you want, and you're going to have to, at a certain point, keep up with your customer service if your brand really grows and scales. I mean, we take a look at companies like Nordstrom's, like I mentioned, and we see that they've done such a great job in their customer service, and that's really what they were known for back in the heyday, right? Now they're known for all these other things, but that was such a part of their part of the fundamentals of why people shopped with them. So when we think about returns and we think about what we can do as brands, when we think about returns, we should really be thinking about it in a couple different steps. Number one, we should be, obviously, if the product is damaged, we should really, look to sell it through a sample sale market. So that is kind of a resell facility, right? So how can we resell this product? Is it through selling it in a collaboration with companies like The RealReal, where, as a brand, you can partner up with them to resell damaged goods or, old seasons or just, aged merchandise? So is it reselling it off of a site like RealReal? Or are you looking to donate that, right, in order to take a tax write-off for your company? So you're looking to donate that to shelters, you're looking to donate that to other charitable organizations. Are you able to kind of recut it and possibly refurnish it into something else? But guys, we've got to do something about these returns. And you know what? Even if you do give your product to charity and you're worried about, your labels, etc. Number one, I'd say get over it. But number two, you can always cut out the labels, right? It's always something that's an option to you, is cutting out the labels. If you're worried about kind of your brand being distributed amongst a different population, for example. But personally, I think it's no big deal. I think giving that kind of tax write-off is such a great benefit to you as a brand, and it's something you can really align yourself with, right? Imagine how your customers will feel when they know that your aged inventory and damaged goods not only are being sent through and sold through sample sales, but also eventually kind of have a double bottom line, right? You're not just here to make money, but whatever it is you can't sell, you end up giving to a charitable cause. That to me, I think, is way more important. And I think your customers, especially in this age of transparency, are really looking for these kinds of opportunities, right? They're looking for ways to find brands that they can connect with, and they're looking to find brands that they are going to be able to want to shop with over and over again because of their ethical and sustainable business practices. Okay, last article from Retailing Weekly. I love going over these things. It's so much fun, right? It's like there's so much happening in retail, and so many of these bigger guys are doing interesting things, and it really sparks some interesting controversy, right? How do we approach business? How do we approach marketing? How do we grow sustainable business models? And I think that it is really valuable for us to be able to flip our positioning on how we think about business, right? When we think about creating business models, it's not just flipping the twice a year schedule of selling. It's about rethinking the entire ways in which we do our own supply chains, about rethinking our priorities, what is most important. So coming into this last article, this was also on Women's Wear Daily, clearly where I get a lot of my retail news, but also looking at places like Jing Daily, also looking at Internet Retailer, also looking at Wall Street Journal, Business of Fashion, just so you guys know where I get my news. Luxury Daily is another great space. But this last article has to do with this amazing brand that I've been in love with for many years, Charlotte Olympia. I don't know if you guys are familiar with her, but Charlotte Olympia has they're known for their fantastic flats, right? They have great heels too, but the advertising is just beautiful. When I was recently at Vegas and Magic speaking out there, I went to take a look at Caesar's Palace because The RealReal had a pop-up shop there, and it was amazing. And on my way to The RealReal, I saw the Charlotte Olympia store, and I just could not stop but take a photograph, walk inside, and that's what I called amazing merchandising. I mean, I looked out there and I was like, this is an incredible store. I need to go inside. By the way, all retail stores should have that feeling. And this brand is just so thoughtfully curated. The advertising, the design aesthetic. I mean, it is footwear art, right? It is one of those favorite things that I love. Okay, so name the publications again, totally. So the publications were Luxury Daily, Internet Retailer, Jing Daily, which is based on Chinese news, China news, also Far East Asia news, I also look at sometimes the India Times, Wall Street Journal, Business of Fashion, and then Women's Wear Daily, right? So those are all the different news sources that I reference on a pretty regular basis. But in any case, so Charlotte Olympia, okay, so they are filing for bankruptcy. And what I think is fascinating is sometimes we think about bankruptcy in a bad way. And to be honest, guys, bankruptcy, when I think of that in terms of retail, to me, it just means restructuring, right? People give bankruptcy a bad name, mostly because on a personal level, it's bad, right? On a personal level, you don't want to be in bankruptcy, right? But on a business level, being in bankruptcy is different. It's basically an opportunity to kind of to start over again when you've got a huge loan, when you're, when you're in debt and you can't figure out how to get out of it, and you basically need an opportunity to reposition, right? And so what they're doing here, which is really great, is they're going to be sadly closing down some of these stores. And I'm really sad about that because there's only about 4 of them, I think, across the country. While the brand is, a London brand, the offices are based in New York. And there are these just a very few flagship locations. And I feel really privileged to be able to be inside of one of them because I think that they're so incredibly beautiful and really well merchandised. But they're going to be closing on their retail stores and they're going to be focusing on their direct-to-consumer online distribution and wholesale sales. And they're going to be looking to bridge into more global partnerships. So I think from that standpoint, we have to tell ourselves, okay, even if a brand that has been around, they've been around for about 10 years, I think they haven't even been around, that long, but they've been around for 10 years. They've been losing money year over year, right? They are in debt and they're like, holy bananas, what do I do with my business? Now, I don't know if any of you guys are in this position where, you're losing money on the business, you need to get a restructuring loan, you need to be able to pivot what it is that you're creating. But these are all very important things to consider, and they don't necessarily mean the end of your business. And I think that that's really important. Sometimes we think about, oh, the business is over, right? It doesn't have to be over. It really depends on the size you are and kind of what your corporate structure is like. But it could be an opportunity to pivot, right? And it could be an opportunity to consolidate. And I feel the same way about companies like Stephen Allen, right? Where you saw them close stores, a consolidation. Even bigger companies like Sears that own a lot of their buildings. They close their stores, they're renting out those flagship locations, and they're consolidating. That is not a bad thing. Consolidating is not a bad thing. It's a shame they have to go through these, financial hula hoops in order to get to the eventual idea that they need to be able to consolidate. But a lot of you guys out there that are, startups, growth stage businesses have an opportunity to grow strategically without needing to necessarily worry about overexposure, right? Or going into too many places. And when you have revenue and you have a business that's making money, it's critical to be able to figure out how to reinvest it in a way that doesn't overexpose you. It's critical to figure out exactly what that line of credit needs to look like in order to scale. And it's important to grow strategically because while it's great to consolidate and it's great to be able to pivot your brand, it's not ideal, right? It's not ideal because it gives you bad press. It's not ideal because it makes people worried about your brand. It makes people worry if they can go shop there. So it kind of destabilizes your image, even though your finances, while they might seem messy, will kind of come out okay, right? So it's more of like a PR situation that we want to avoid. But I think that the brand is going to be successful. They don't over assort their SKUs. They're in this great price point between $600 and $1,500. So they're kind of in this nice kind of, luxury, advanced contemporary luxury price point, which I think is really nice. And I think that they are going to be fine. I am not concerned about it, but I think it's a great example of how we think about bankruptcy and how we think about pivoting. So, fashion brand guru, you mentioned Nasty Gal. Well, what's fascinating here is while Sophia Amoruso's business went into bankruptcy, she was able to raise capital and launch something else, right? So again, bankruptcy is just kind of bad for PR. Bankruptcy is also bad because it shows that you weren't able to grow strategically. Now, one would hope that in a, startup, right nowadays, where we've had so many examples of like what doesn't work, that even if it's better never to emulate a business that you think is working, right? It's always better to say, what isn't working? And then what is the business model that I can create that satisfies my customers' needs and that satisfies my business operating needs? So anyway, not to go into business strategy, but it's my favorite. All right, guys, I am going to finish packing, which is not the most exciting thing in the world. But I'm very excited, and I will be trying to go to sleep very early this afternoon because I'm going to be trying to adjust myself to the time difference. But thanks, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. This episode will be live on YouTube in about a week, so we're going to repost it in case you missed any of it. But thank you guys so much for joining me, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye.